Obviously, everybody watching and listening is going to advance to Fantasy Week 16. So let's beat the waiver wire right now on Fantasy Football Today Express. All right, what's up? It's Dave and Adam. Dave has been working hard to find players to stash for next week. What do we got? Let's start with the DSTs, Dave.
Well, listen, it's not about necessarily next week. There's a little bit of this week as well, and you can check your waiver wire to see if the Cardinals are out there. I like their matchups the next 2 weeks. The Jets this week have Jacksonville. We'll talk about that Jaguars offense in a second. That's not a terrible matchup, but they're highly rostered. The Falcons DST is not. People have not either don't want to trust the Falcons. They're waiting till next week to pick up the Falcons, or they don't know about the Falcons. But next week, this week they've got Las Vegas. Not a bad matchup. Yeah. Next week, the Giants. Week after that, the Commanders. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. You can use potentially the Falcons this week, and especially next week, I would try and stash the Falcons DST. And if you have that stash space, the Colts DST. Next week, they get the Titans at home. The week after that, they're at the Giants. This is not one of the worst defenses in the league. If you have a bye this week, pick up the Falcons and the Colts DST. You're locked into starting DSTs against the Giants the rest of the season.
That's not nice, Dave. All right, how about quarterbacks? I'm looking at Cleveland at quarterback. I'm looking at Cleveland at wide receiver. They've got Cincinnati next week. Who are you looking at?
Jameis is definitely on the list, 47% available, so about half of CBS leagues. And not a lot of people picked him up after we recommended him earlier this week. So that tells me that the public does not want to trust Jameis Winston. I don't blame you for this week. I would implore you to trust them next week. Cincinnati's defense is that bad. Anthony Richardson still available in 35% of leagues. He's got the Titans in week 16. He's got the Giants in week 17. That's a quarterback that could help you out. And then I don't know if you really want to trust Will Levis. He's got some good matchups in week 16 and 17. Aaron Rodgers in week 16. Cooper Rush in week 16. They all have decent matchups. It's just a matter of, A, do you really need them? B, are you trying to block your opponent from getting them? Those two factors, if you don't really need them, you don't want to keep away from your opponent, we should probably just stop talking about quarterbacks.
No, I think you should. Yeah, I mean, I would be very afraid of playing against Jameis Winston in week 16. I would not want him in my opponent's lineup. You don't have to drop someone good, but you drop Evan Ingram for him. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that after the break, but let's get some running backs here, running backs to stash.
Well, we know that Tony Pollard didn't practice on Wednesday or Thursday. This is usually how he operates. He usually misses one of these days. That's how it's been the last few weeks of the regular season for him. If he's somehow out, Tyjae Spears is going to be locked in as a top 24 fantasy running back. So see if he's out there, 56% available, even before the Titans practice on Friday. Grab him if you've got somebody who you could cut. If Pollard ends up playing, great. You're cutting Tyjae Spears. Who might you cut Tyjae Spears for? How about Isaiah Davis, who played nearly as many snaps as Braylon Allen last week, but dominated on third down, had every single snap inside the 10 for the Jets, and he's 70% available. He's my favorite. I know we don't really recommend stash running backs this late in the season, but if you don't like your running back depth, this is somebody who might provide decent running back depth. We don't know for sure that Breece Hall isn't going to play in week 15. I would think that he's not going to play. And so if you don't want to speculate on Spears, Bigsby, Sincere McCormick, those guys are already rostered in like 70% of leagues. Isaiah Davis would be the name that I would go to at running back.
Dave, I think I'm going to drop Braylon Allen right now, who's my fourth running back for Tyjae Spears. Approve?
If I knew for sure that Pollard was out, yes.
I'm not starting Braylon Allen though,
Yeah, but you don't want to give him. Listen, I know he didn't get the high value touches that Davis got last week, but he's still going to play. They're going to use multiple running backs in New York, so I'd be a little nervous about putting that guy out there on the waiver wire. But the second that Tony Pollard's ruled out, if that happens, yes, I would do that.
Okay, fine. I'll drop Christian Watson instead. But my point is, if you Spears is so much better to me than Allen if both starting running backs are out, if Hall and Pollard are out. All right, wide receivers to stash. You know what? First, real quick break on Fantasy Football Today Express, and then we'll be right back. And we are right back. Okay, wide receivers to stash, Dave.
Cedric Tillman tops my list, 48% available. Let's not forget that he had at least 8 targets in 4 straight games before he got concussed, at least 16 PPR points in 3 of those 4 games. David Njoku not expected to play for the Browns this week. If Cedric Tillman is cleared from the concussion protocol, I think he could end up being the second best wide receiver for the Browns in a matchup where Jameis Winston's going to have to throw a lot against Kansas City. We know their pass rush hasn't been as dominant lately. We know that their secondary is a little bit beat up. I don't know what Adam is doing on his side of the screen here. But
looking at a Bucks practice report.
What'd you learn?
Evans is back, and it just says Irving remains a question mark from Greg Allman.
Okay. All right. Well, I doubt that Rachaad White's going to be out there on the waiver wire, but Sean Tucker would see an uptick in playing time if you're sort of desperate for running back help. Back to the wide receivers. The only other names that I would really recommend are Keon Coleman and Elijah Moore, especially now that Mike Evans is back at practice. If Evans was not practicing, Jalen McMillan would be someone that I'd be interested in. I don't like that he had a lot of screen targets last week, but he's got good speed. He's used as a perimeter receiver. Was the target bump last week because they were playing Vegas? Was it because Evans isn't 100%? I don't really know, but he wouldn't be someone I would prioritize at this point. It's Tillman 1, Keon Coleman 2, Elijah Moore 3. And that's if you can't get Adam Thielen, who's still out there in like a quarter of CBS Sports leagues.
Yeah, and one more thing about McMillan is I don't know if Sterling Shepard is practicing today, but Shepard has had 6 or 7 targets in 3 straight games. Not to say that you should pick him up, but if Shepard is out, it does make McMillan even a little more appealing.
Sure, because we've seen how they've used McMillan, and that certainly helps. I think it'll help Cade Otton, too, because Shepard's generally been a short area target. He has had some downfield throws, but I think if he's gone and if Bucky's gone, it should open up a little bit more for Cade Otton. I'd be more encouraged to start Cade Otton. 2 more names. This is if you have an IR. I'm going to say Marquise Brown's name again. He's still out there in a ton of leagues. Chris Olave, I don't know if he's going to come back this year. He's out there in 36% of leagues. The worst thing you could do is stash him and waste the IR spot on Olave until you find somebody else that you want to put there.
All right, and how about some tight ends?
If you can't get Hunter Henry, Jake Ferguson's the best name at 40% available. He's got Carolina this week. He's got Tampa next week. I like those matchups for Jake Ferguson, and he's usually good for at least 6 targets per game. But Jacksonville is an interesting spot now. Evan Ingram is out for the year. He's going to have shoulder surgery, and Brenton Strange is going to take over. And not that Brenton Strange had a ton of targets in the 4 games that Evan Ingram missed earlier this year, but he did score a bunch of touchdowns, had some modest PPR production. He's got matchups against the Jets this week and at the Raiders next week and at the Titans the week after that. And when he did play earlier this year, Adam, Gabe Davis was healthy. Christian Kirk was healthy. Those guys are not going to play anymore. So maybe there's an opportunity for Brenton Strange to not only play a lot, but to see an uptick in targets, maybe even be the number 2 target getter for the Jacksonville Jaguars here down the stretch. In tight end premium leagues, I am absolutely making sure that Brenton Strange is not on the waiver wire, meaning if he's out there, I'm going to pick him up. He's available in 97% of CBS Sports leagues.
Stone Smart. Nick Means in our chat wants to know Stone Smart or Brenton Strange.
I'd rather have Strange than Stone Smart. I know that Greg Roman talked very highly about Stone Smart this week and about how he was such a key part of their offense last week when Disley went down. But part of it was because of Smart's blocking, and they like that element that he brings. Plus, Ladd McConkey figures to be back this week, and that'll take some work away from Stone Smart.
Now, in my head, I'll be singing People Are Strange for the rest of the day. Brenton is strange. All right, thanks, everybody. This is FFT Express. I got to go because mailbag's coming up in 3 minutes. We'll see you there. Have a good one and a great weekend.